What's up, guys? It's Ben Reed with the Next Gen Sales Leaders. Welcome back to the show. I have Jeff Gostovich here, and he is a sales superstar. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Oh, thank you, Ben. It's an honor to be here with you.
So obviously your lay of the land is mostly in oil and gas. So would love to hear your story and kind of how you got to where you are.
I've been in business to business and business to consumer sales for 26 years now. I'm dating myself, but that's all right. With that age comes experience and wisdom, I hope. But the bulk of that, so going on my 15th year now in the oil and gas industry, and specifically capital raising with drilling projects, production projects, high risk, high reward investments with high net worth and high income individuals, family offices, and institutions. And over the last 14 years of that, I learned more about sales than I did in my previous 11 years by far of any other type of sale that I've done. And I've done it all from commercial real estate to telecom networks to wealth coaching. And none of it taught me really what I call the Jedi-level of sales. And I'm still learning as one, but the Jedi-level of sales, nothing compares to the oil and gas industry.
I agree. When I thought of like the hardest sale in the world, what I thought of, because I saw this from afar, I was like, how the hell did these guys sell contracts to ExxonMobil?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a whole world. I mean, we could spend the whole hour just talking about that, but I agree with you. I think oil and gas enterprise level sales for millions and billion-dollar contracts, if you can do that, you can sell anything on planet Earth, as far as I'm concerned.
You know what's funny about that? So I have done that. In the previous 3 years ago now, I was in the advisory service for oil and gas, working with super majors like Exxon, like BP, Shell, and all the way down to small oil and gas companies, advising them and getting a contract to help them sell assets. But I can tell you this, Ben, that is difficult, but 10x more difficult than that is where I started and what I'm doing now, which is raising money from individual investors on high risk investments that they don't even get to meet you most of the time. And when I started in 2010 doing that specifically in oil and gas, there was no Zoom. There was very rarely face-to-face. It was 99% of the money I raised was over the phone with a FedEx package in front of them, walking them through how they could lose every penny in a high-risk investment and getting them to overnight a check back to me, sometimes within 24 hours for 6 figures.
Wow. Okay. So wait, we got to break that down. How the heck did you do that? Well, I want to understand, who were you calling on? What were you saying? And how could you possibly get somebody to do that in 24 hours?
Well, to answer that better, one of the most knowledge implanting sales jobs I've ever done was selling doors door to door. Okay.
Oh, right.
Knocking on people's doors and knocking in, various areas of the door to find out what the weakness was, so that when they open the door, I could talk to them about that pain point in the door that I just found, and then selling them a door. Most people would say that's a difficult job, and it was. And it taught me a lot about rejection and taking it and learning how to objection handle and things like that. So fast forward to the oil and gas industry, when you're cold calling, and to answer your question, I'm calling high net worth, what are called accredited investors. I know you're familiar with the term. Your audience may not be, but accredited investor just means, you have a lot of money, over $1 million liquid, and make over 200,000 a year. So you're dealing with those personalities that are, A-type, successful, busy. And so getting their attention, getting their respect, and getting them into a package in 24 hours and picking up a check in 24 to 48 hours is a tall order. And it really cut my teeth on the true art of sales.
So what did you do though? Like, I'm curious in the tactics. Like,
okay,
call a guy and you say, "Hey, Bob, I got an investment for you." I'm curious on the actual script, because that's the devil's in the details. And I'm curious how you did that. That's fascinating.
Well, I was blessed to be with a company that was legitimate. There were a lot of oil and gas scams in the 90s and 2000s that kind of gave the industry a bad name. Shouldn't, not kind of, really did. And so I had that hurdle to climb too, but there was no script. It was a template, basically an outline of introducing yourself, getting them to say no immediately. So that gives you the green light to sell. Because unless they give you a no, you really shouldn't be selling. And so the art of it, in the very first sentence was, I've got an oil and gas investment. Would you like to see it? Who's going to say yes to that? Nobody that's real anyway. Mm-hmm. So they give you the no, and then it's game on. Well, if I may suggest, it's a $200,000 tax deduction that could return well over $350,000. I know you'd look at that. So then you've got your hook, your zinger, which is the money, the tax deduction, the upside. And that all happens within 10 seconds. And so, I could go into the whole script, but then it's qualifying them, making sure that they are an accredited investor, getting them to tell you about their income, about their liquid net worth, about their risk tolerance, all within a 5-minute call. It is not for everybody. And it takes a lot of gumption, a lot of swagger, a lot of moxie, and a lot of rejection handling. By handling, I mean being able to take that and keep going. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, like I said, that I learned more in that first year of selling oil and gas deals that way than I did in the previous 25 or 20 years combined. So yeah, I'm really thankful for that learning curve, because it's got now, after 14 years of doing that, to much bigger investment banking deals. I earned my way into as an investment banker in Houston by having that resume of being able to sell over the phone, et cetera. And then working with, really big money and out of Houston, and private equity out of New York, and getting those billions of dollars attributed to the teams that were helping me close those deals really is where my next level came. But I can tell you this much. I'll never, God willing, go back to selling to the private equity New York, I'm the smartest guy in the room, and I'm going to tell you why kind of client. Yeah. It looks great on my resume, and I was able to be a part of a company that raised a lot of money doing that. But I'm back to what I like, which is working with individuals and curating portfolios of investments, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's real estate, which we do above the ground, or whether it's independent films, which we are excited to launch our first fund for. So, but individuals is where I'd rather be.
That's awesome. Yeah. You said something that I think people may have glossed over, but the most important thing in a sale is actually having a great brand that has real demand being generated into it, and you have a great product that you can deliver. And so I actually I'll show you something quick here that I happen to have up. And I think this kind of hits on that subject. Let me show you my screen real quick, and I will show you what I'm looking at. So anybody who's not listening, or is not watching, but listening, I will explain what I'm looking at to you. So I built this literally because I wanted to describe to people what matters most when you're actually building a sales organization. And everyone would say, well, you need great salespeople, right? So they would start actually where I would say the end is, which is a great sales team. And they'd say, well, you need great sales management. And I'd say, that's true, but that's actually the second least important thing in the entire world. And so what I did was, if you go back, and what I'm looking at is, it goes sales reps is least important, sales management is second least important, back to sales team structure, then sales team standards, sales tech, integration, sales KPIs, sales philosophy, marketing, demand. But it goes all the way back to the beginning, where it's showing the number one thing that matters is, who are you calling on, and do they have a tremendous need? So the problems and desires, do they have a lot of demand? And do you have a lot of competition? And is the thing that you're offering fitting them perfectly? Because, like you were saying, if you don't have, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here now. If you don't have a really dialed offer like you did, like you knew exactly what to say, you knew exactly what your close was going for, and you had a reputable brand. So when people would check into you, they would see you were legitimate. And so I remember the first time I went door to door, kind of like your doors, but I did it for PBS, and I realized that I was killing it at the door. I was doing an amazing job, but I thought I was just great. And I was good relative to the other canvassers or the door to door guys. But the thing that allowed me to be great was because I showed up at the door talking about Sesame Street. And everyone was like, yeah, I love Big Bird. I grew up on, whatever other cartoon that came out of that. Or I love Mr. Rogers. So it was like, yeah, I just was the representative, the smiling face behind Mr. Rogers. And so that
Sure.
made a huge difference. So
Sure. Well, I love that flow chart and I want it, by the way.
yeah, I'll send it to you.
Anyway, but you're 100% right. You know, selling ice to Eskimos is what everybody wants to be able to do in sales. And having that art and that skill is absolutely a quality that, is a good thing. But unless you've got a good product, you're only gonna be able to sell an ice cube to an Eskimo one time.
Right.
And he's
Exactly.
never going to buy from you again because there's no value. There's no demand. They have that. And so if you, what I call Jedi mind trick somebody into buying, that is untenable long-term.
Exactly.
And a salesman really wants a long-term career here. It's one of the hardest industries to establish a long-term career, but it all starts with product demand. You just nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, we were talking about this on the first call, like, if you are in the position where you have to persuade somebody of something, it's like you're missing the point. That I like to call myself not VP of sales, but VP of alignment. And the reason I say that is that, look, all I'm trying to do is determine if somebody has a need or a problem and align them with an ideal solution. And so I always start all my pitches. My structure is really simple. Hey, Frank, I saw that you're XYZ type of person. I saw that you're an accredited investor, as an example. And then I go into, and it seems, I bet you have a lot of capital just sitting in the bank that's just getting depleted by inflation. Is that right? And they say, yeah. And then you say, so how are you guys currently allocating? So like the problem there is, like, if they don't say yes to that, or if they don't say, I have a lot of cash I want to allocate, well, then it's like, it doesn't matter if you have an investment vehicle.
Right.
Right. And so I always, and now that's a very obvious example, but like in software sales, we might be talking to, I'm just gonna use a random thing, like a geologist, and I'm selling a geology software. Well, if I can't very clearly articulate the pain points of a geologist and call that out within the first, like you said, the hook, the first 10 seconds, then the guy just is like, well, what are you even calling me? Like, I don't care about your stupid software. So I always establish problems. And then I always say, like, throw out my brand. Like, imagine I have the next gen sales leaders thing on and I was selling this, there was a product for this. I always say to my prospect, hey, look, I want you to throw away the brand for a second. Pretend next gen sales leaders didn't exist. I want to define the perfect solution for the problem we already agree on. And if we can get there, then maybe I can show you how we fit that solution. Does that sound fair? And they're going to say, yeah. And then I'll go through every single line item of the ideal solution. I said, you agree that's a perfect solution for you? And they'll say, yeah, that's amazing. And why can I do that? It's because I've had 1,000 of these conversations. So I already know what their perfect solution looks like. And they just think I'm like a magician. It's like, no, I've done it 1,000 times. So yeah, it's all about alignment. I mean, that's what makes it so easy, in my opinion, once you get that right.
Well said, my friend. I'm going to steal that title. I like it. The VP of alignment.
VP of alignment.
I've been a lot of VPs, but never of alignment, business development, sales, things like that, which are so tried and true and vanilla. That's a good one. And that's true, because what you're seeking, what you should ultimately seek in any sale is 100% alignment, and that's the only parallel at the end of a close where everybody walks away a winner.
Right.
And that is the ultimate goal. If you are coercing or twisting or Jedi mind tricking somebody in that's not in alignment with you, sure, you can get that deal done, but ultimately you win, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And how tenable is that long-term in any business model?
Mm-hmm. And they might think like they won, like you convinced them they won, but then they realize, oh shit, I got duped. And it's like all of a sudden all trust is lost.
They come out of the ether that you put them in.
Mm-hmm.
And that hangover happens. So the ether wears off, buyer's remorse, deal cancellations, all the things that I know you've experienced, I've experienced in my earlier career that are part of the learning curve. But the ultimate goal is to get what you just described perfectly, is alignment. And then the realization is that and it's hard for a true sales guy like you and I, right? Ego is involved and we want to win, but ultimately understanding that we win if what we're trying to align with doesn't align, and we walk away knowing that I couldn't have helped that person. And the win is in walking the deal for him and for you. For him, because no buyer's remorse is going to happen, no ether withdrawal. But for you, time, right? You're not spending as much time. Once you get to that point and you realize there's not alignment that's going to happen, and I'm not going to start pouring on coercion or Jedi mind tricks. I'm going to save that energy and that real estate in my brain and the real estate in my day, meaning the time clock, to spend it on somebody else. And that is really where it gets, it's very nuanced. It's a very art of the deal of knowing when to walk a deal, but it is a win if you do it in a timely manner.
Yeah. I always said in my early part of my career, you've heard this phrase probably, is the, another good meeting, AGM, another good meeting. Because in the oil and gas industry, when I first got in, I don't know, 12 years ago, whenever it was, and I was going and I was selling, people would take my meetings because in the oil and gas industry, they're not like the New York banker that's kind of a jerk. You know, they're polite and they're respectful, and they'll take your meeting if somebody makes a nice introduction for you, and because they don't want to burn bridges, because it's a who you know type of world.
Very.
But I was finding a lot that I would come out of the meetings and nothing would come out of it. And but it felt good because I had the meeting. And so it was like, oh, another good meeting, but it never actually led to a deal. And so like what I realized was it took years for me to figure this out. I was getting objections while they were nodding and saying yes to me. And I was completely unaware of them. And so they were getting off the phone, especially with like the Exxon types or the big boys, where you have like 10 dudes in a room and everyone's, they're not on the video. You can't see they're smiling or looking off in the distance or whatever. And so it's just dead silence, especially if you're the prototypical sales guy that just like talks the entire time. And so I would get off these calls going, well, I just did a great job. And in reality, they probably all were rolling their eyes the entire time. And so what I realized was the reason that I look for alignment from literally the first second of the call, and I check in all the way through, is because by establishing problem fit and then solution fit, and then I go and I prove that my solution fits the ideal solution, I can find their objection within the first 10 seconds. So if I say, hey, do you have this problem? And they say no. Okay, well then it doesn't matter what I say. I could say, okay, well, what you don't have this particular problem? And they say no. And I go and maybe I spin it a different way and I say, so this never happens to you? And they go, no. And then to your point, I just go, great. Seems like there's nothing to do here. I'll talk to you later. And then I jump off the call, because why would I pitch to somebody, which I'm sure that you've heard this term, pitching in the dark. Why would I pitch into somebody's darkness and unknown sphere of what they're actually going on into every day if I don't have to? And so for me, that's always been my way of I'll sell against myself. I have guys who'll be like, well, can you do this? I'll be like, no. And they'll be like, how do you think this competitor does compared to you? I say, they crush it. They're so much better at us than that. If that's what you want, you should go with them, because we don't do that. And they're just like, what is going on with this guy? Like, why is he like telling me to get off the phone? And they start to pull you back in. And I've had guys then immediately switch kind of like their cagey attitude. And they're like, well, tell me more. So what do you guys do? How does it work? And all of a sudden I'm back on track. So yeah, works like so easy.
We had a conversation around this, and that was one of the most fun rabbit holes we went down, is what you're talking about, and the psychology of the sale, the takeaway, things like that are really difficult to do for most salespeople. But once you get there, they're fun. And telling them, no, you should go with somebody else. Whether you mean it or not, it gets their attention because they're so used to being catered to and sold. But something else you talked about that we talked about last time is so many salespeople just want to they love the sound of their own voice, and they want to do all the talking and what I call spray and praying, and hoping that something they say is going to hit a pain point. And that's when the guy's going to go, no, that's what I want you to tell me. That's so antithetical to sales. It's what 95% of salespeople do, and why 95% of people fail in sales is it's not about that. It's, in fact, there's an adage that I completely buy into, which is he who talks the most loses in any deal making. And you could call it sales, you could call it contract negotiation, talking to your wife or having an argument, typically that adage holds true ubiquitously in any sort of negotiation. And I teach salespeople the art of that. And it's one of the most difficult things to do, because salespeople like you and me, we do love to talk. We have the gift of gab. And so it's like, well, why wouldn't I use my gift all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the gift is a silver bullet that should be used like a sniper, not a spray and prayer. And, one of the things I do in my mind, Ben, when I'm pitching or when I'm speaking to an audience I shouldn't say public speaking, that's different. But when I'm in a contract negotiation with a group of people, or whether it's a one-on-one pitch, I'm keeping a visual image of the scene from the movie Predator. Remember that movie?
Yep.
Jesse the Body Ventura grabs the Gatling gun off the helicopter because they think there's the aliens right there behind the trees. And he just starts mowing down the trees, unloads that entire 1,000-round clip. Smoke, trees falling. And then they're like, did we get him? That's what most salespeople do. They become Jesse the Body Ventura from Predator and just unload and hoping one of those bullets is going to hit. So I keep that image in my head, and I'm literally thinking about, am I spraying or am I snipering? And so no, the best way to do it is to be that sniper. 2 shots to the chest, 1 to the head, which is a horrible analogy because you're not trying to kill anybody, but you're trying to be effective with what your gift is, that silver bullet, which is the art of the gift of gab. And, I'm completely doing the opposite right now with you, but I'm not trying to sell you.
We're on a podcast.
We're just talking. Right. But that is one of the most difficult but also one of the most blessed gifts a true salesman can earn, whether it's B2B, B2C, or husband to wife, dad to child, child to dad. I've seen kids utilize these gifts better than their parents and win every time. My parents would argue that I was that kid. But these are all the fun, Jedi skill sets that really separate the cream from the crop when you're talking about true salespeople. And that was a fun rabbit hole. But the psychology, going back to your takeaway. So saying something that nobody else says is what generally I love to do, which you just touched on perfectly. Telling them, no, I can't help you. Or no, even better, you're not a good fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
When you're dealing with A-type personalities, and especially specifically with high net worth individuals, business owners, C-suite clients, they're used to everybody else. The din is people saying, how can I serve you today? Or I need this, I need that, whether it's family, employees, whatever. So if you're that one voice that comes in and go, no, you're not a good fit for me. What do? It gives them pause. They're like, holy shit, did I just hear that come out of this guy's mouth? And then they lean in. And like you said, they start clawing you back because it's refreshing.
Mm-hmm. It builds trust too. It's like, because if somebody thinks that no matter what happens, you're always going to go for the kill, regardless of whether it's actually good for the guy, that's where I think people's guards are up when they talk to salespeople. When I talk to a salesperson, I'm the worst. Like, I love salespeople and I hate them at the same time. And what I mean by that is, if you're a great salesperson, I love you. If you are a bad salesperson, I'm just like looking at you like, oh, you are just such a waste of my time. And I think the distinction is really, do I feel like they understand my problems? Do they understand what I'm dealing with? Do they understand what I'm trying to accomplish? And are they actually working at where my brain is at this moment? And if they're not syncing with me like that and actually trying to serve me, and serving me might be saying no to me, then I will turn off immediately. And so I just think as soon as you say, no, sorry, we're not a good fit. No, you should go over there. It's like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this guy actually gets it. He's trying to actually help me regardless of whether it means a sale for him or not. And ironically and counterintuitively for the salesperson, that actually leads to the sale.
Yes. And you nailed it. Their guard drops and you can literally see it and hear it. If you're on the phone, you hear it. If you're in person or Zoom, you see it. You can see their shoulders relax. You can hear their voice go less tight on the phone. You can hear it get warmed up. When you remove what I call and what everybody should call wanting the deal more than them.
Mm-hmm.
They expect you to want that deal, like you said, to go for the kill, even if it doesn't make sense for them. So the sooner you can get out ahead of that and be like, no, man, I don't need you. I'd value you, but I don't need you. And this may not be a good fit for you. That guard comes down, that trust gets built. And that's the real art of rapport, right? Trust and relation. Those are the two parts of rapport that are most important. And where do most salespeople try and build rapport? The weather, the dog, which sure, those things can get somebody talking, but is it really going to get you to a deal point? No. You want to establish trust and alignment is a better word by letting them know, I don't need this deal worse than you need it. In fact, I'm here to argue potentially that you need it more than I need it. And once you say that, by saying you should go look at, here's another one, shop my competition. Here's the number to 3 of my competitors. Whether most of the time they're not going to do that if you do that effectively, but you should be ready for them to do it if you do. And you should be confident that what you're selling, going back to your chart, product first, demand, and that you're meeting a need, a pain point that they have. It doesn't matter where they go, because shopping you based on price now doesn't matter if you've built that trust.
I think the biggest thing, 100% agree, by the way, a big thing that nobody really thinks about relating to this idea of perfectly pitching and catering to the person, really being what I call in the book I wrote, the $1 Million Pitch, is it's all about being a doctor. So it's about being a fiduciary. If you go to a doctor, is a doctor trying to, like a good doctor, is a doctor trying to pitch you on Tylenol or whatever the drug is? Now, if he's a bad doctor, he'll probably like, you need to have this Vicodin, but in reality, you don't probably get that vibe from doctors. You go in, they go, okay, let me take your blood pressure and okay, and what's going on, and tell me how's that feeling for you? Okay, well, here are our options. Let's take some imaging before we jump to conclusions. It's like this very kind of give and take consultative approach. But also, I think the big thing that people miss is like, yeah, that's all important. Why do we trust doctors? Because they're subject matter experts. Because we know that they've been through 20 years of school and they've seen 1,000 patients and they're science driven. And whether people actually listening to this or even you agree with what doctors believe, because I'm actually kind of skeptical of doctors myself. But I think the idea is still the idea, which is the thing that makes us as salespeople able to be a fiduciary or actually speak to somebody's real problems or guide them towards a correct solution. It's, are you a subject matter expert? Do you know the space better than anybody else? Do you know the competition better than anybody else? Do you understand the ideal solutions and the feature sets better than anybody else? Because if you're going to be guiding somebody, they want to know that you know more about the space than they do, because they may have just come into the market. Now they are, oh shit, I have a problem. I need to solve this. And they start Googling and they start talking to friends. Hey, do you know how to solve the problem? And they start looking at some various products or services. And they might think that they're a little subject matter experts, but then they get on a call with you and their eyes just turn huge because they're like, oh my God, there's a whole world I didn't understand. And this guy's now guiding me. And so I think that level of understanding is the basis for the entire sales pitch, in my opinion.
I agree. How many times have you shopped your doctor on price? I haven't.
Right.
I've had 7 surgeries in my life, mostly sports injury related. I never shopped them on price. I may have gotten a second opinion based on their expertise, comparing it to another doctor's expertise. But even in those scenarios, it comes down to, who do I feel the most comfortable with?
Right. Who do you
Because
trust?
there's not going to, who do I trust? There's not going to be a big delta in expertise between orthopedic surgeons. There may be price, and I don't care. I want to know who is the best expert who helped me with my literal pain point.
Right.
And that literally or figuratively, whatever the financial pain point is or the physical pain point is, it's all boils down to trust. And yeah, if you do not create that eye to eye mentality that you do not need the deal more than they need it, they'll never trust you. You still may get a deal every now and then fall into your lap, but ultimately your career is basically over unless you learn to truly true that. And you know how you do that, Ben? We talked about this, is just being authentic, being yourself, right? Showing them that you are a human being with weaknesses, with strengths, with flaws, And ultimately in the sales model, one of the most powerful things I had a hard time learning to say, the 3 words, I don't know.
Mhm. Yep.
Boom. As soon as you say that to a question, and I'll sometimes, you know, I'll sometimes throw that in, even if I do have an idea of the answer, I'll throw that in just to let them know, I don't know, but I want to know why you want to know. And let's find out together.
Mhm.
So now we're going beyond, you've established trust in the beginning by telling them to shop your competition or whatever thing you did with confidence, right? And with authenticity. But now we're into the next level of trust where if you tell them, I don't know, let's find out together, you move from the opposite side of the table to the same side of the table. Now you're a teammate with them. And now you're literally helping them, holding their hand, what analogy you want to use, and becoming a partner with them on the conclusion, which is teaming up on the pain point that they threw a question out that you didn't know the answer to, but you got it.
Mhm.
And that is another powerful thing to use in sales. And I don't mean I say it like, I don't want to weaponize it. It's not a weapon. It is literally a tool that is very effective, like a surgeon's tool on fixing my knee. That is as important in sales to use as a tool as anything. So, I could go forever on that subject, but yes, that's a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, I wonder to what degree there is when people talk about subject matter expertise, there is a question in my mind of what is sufficient? And I would argue that, coming back to the expertise discussion around the doctors, it's not sufficient for them just to believe you're an expert. You actually have to be one. And I'm not just talking about the product. I'm not just talking about the market. I'm not just talking about the competitors. I'm not just talking about the actual person. So when I think of ideal customer profiles, I have these crazy, literally like 100-point documents where I very clearly can articulate what this person believes on, how old they are, how many kids they have. I mean, I literally give them a name. I'll be like, this is Jason. This is my avatar, which is pretty standard in the marketing world. But I think it's less talked about in the sales world, and I think it's less focused on in the sales world. But I have to be an expert in that person so I can understand how they look and feel. I mean, hell, the reason I have a hat on and the reason I have a beard and the reason I'm just more chill and more relaxed, I probably could put on a collared shirt like a golf shirt. But that's what when I'm selling to the oil field specifically. So we have a data analytics tool. I've been selling the oil field for a long time. I'm in many other industries too, but for the oil field specific, this this is how they look. I mean, they have a hat, they have some sunglasses on, and they got a beard, and they might have a golf shirt on. And if you're in Houston, they might not have the hat, and they might have more of a button down of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll have a vest if you're in Midland. I mean, it's like you got to dress and look like the people that you're selling to, but you can't do that if you're not actually in the culture. So I actually had to move to Midland. I had to move to Houston. I had to go live in actual oil field conditions in Williston and Watford, North Dakota, up in Greeley, Colorado, and Vernal, Utah, and going up I actually had to live it. And so I just, this idea that you're going to just get into this industry or any industry for that matter, be a salesperson and just pretend is like, it's not going to work. People are going to smell you out. They're going to know, oh, you don't know what a cattle guarder or a culvert is or what a high point is on the middle of a lease road. Like they're going to know, you just don't know. And all of a sudden your trust is gone.
Yeah.
So for me, it's so important you can't just pretend. You got to truly be an expert.
It's funny you bring that up, and you're right. And you can dress the part that you think your audience wants, but unless you know the culture, like moving to Midland, moving to Houston, learning the acronyms, the terminology, they're going to smell you a mile away, no matter what you're dressed like. But I'm going to flip that script on you. Okay. So when I was in the investment banking world with an investment bank in Houston, we would often go to New York City to corral private equity into our deals. And we're talking Manhattan, downtown, Goldman Sachs types of offices, private equity firms, hedge funds. When I first started that, I had to pull out my old ties, my full suits, my wingtips, and I thought that was going to help. But you know what? It didn't work. I went back to my roots of dressing what probably as the Texas tuxedo. the
Mhm.
sport coat, the jeans, the cowboy boots, and the cowboy hat. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I grew up anyway. I'm a cowboy. I've got the horses to prove it, right? I'm talking to you from Wyoming right now.
Mhm.
Um, so when I did that and then did those trips, walking down Manhattan in a cowboy boots hat and sport coat with an open collared shirt and maybe a popping little, you know, whatever you call those things, I got so many more meetings because I looked like an oil man.
Mm.
I was there to sell oil deals to investors. They
Mhm.
wanted to look that was my authentic self. That was my
Mhm.
product self. And that was where I was the most comfortable. And man, I tore it up then. Got meetings, got the dollars in, and I took that learning lesson of what you're talking about to a whole nother level. Yes, you do want to somewhat look the part, but the best thing to do is look your part.
Mhm. So
That's
I'm
what
like,
they want.
I'm going to 100% agree with you. And I'm also going to counter it. Okay.
Okay.
So I agree with you 100%. I think the reason that that worked was because you were selling oil deals. And so you were the hot girl at the freaking dance, you know? And so you walk in with your cowboy boots and you walk in with your, you know, everything. And they're like, of course this guy's an oil investor, you know? It's like, so they're like, I want that.
Yeah.
Now the flip to that, I'm going to give you a different example. It's like literally the opposite. We were selling Oxy. This is like 5 years ago. And my business partner at the time was the guy you're talking that you tried to sell in New York. He was Yale, Yale, MIT, uh, you know, multi-millionaire type, always wearing those suits, you know, exactly what you're describing. You know, kind of a little bit, you know, he's over there. You know, he's from the East Coast. He's from the like I'm the Big Apple kind of guy. Fly in. You know, you can see them get off the plane in Midland, right? You
Mile
know
away.
what?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah. So he rolls into the meeting with 20 operations managers, and they're all wearing like FR, you know, fire retardant clothes, and they got their hats on. They're chewing tobacco. This is at the Oxy office downtown, outside of Midland on the Loop. And
Okay.
so we walk in and we're giving the presentation, and he gets up and because he wanted to do it. So and I'm actually dressed like them, just sitting there, kind of like watching the whole thing. At the end, the main guy came up. I'm not going to name names. The main guy comes up to me and he goes, "That was the worst presentation I've ever seen in my life." And I watched it. I was like, I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was fantastic, but I thought it was fine. But what pissed them off was they thought that he was talking down to them as if they were stupid compared to him. And
Yeah.
and I watched it and I don't think it was the words he was saying. I think it was the aesthetic. I think it was the vibe. I think it was just he was the, you know, big Apple guy with the big tech coming from MIT to tell you how to do things, and it pissed them off. So I think that it's not a one way or the other way. I think it completely depends upon what the person needs. And I think ultimately that's where we're agreeing here, which is like the guys in the big wigs, what they needed was they needed an oil field guy. They needed an oil field investor. What these guys probably wanted was somebody to relate to them and make big tech not seem so fancy and so difficult and so I'm better than you. So I think
Okay.
it's just at the end of the day all about knowing thy audience and knowing what they need.
Well, here's the kicker to your counter, which is I didn't have time to move to New York City. I didn't want to move to New York City like you've done with Midland, Houston, to get the culture. I didn't want anything to do with New York City being a part of my DNA. So when I tried to look like it, it did not work. And
Right.
so those salespeople that are listening right now, if you don't have the ability to move or to recreate literally your DNA, like Ben's done, just be yourself.
Mhm.
And that's what it was. And if your product is yourself, that's even better. And I'm telling you right now, if you're selling something that you wouldn't personally use or buy or be a part of, and you're just doing it for the money, you're probably going to fail. So being yourself should be part of your product. Being an oil man is part of my DNA, right? That's
Mhm.
easy. So find a product or a company that fits your culture, your alignment, your spirituality, your foundational bricks for where you want to take your life, and sell that, because then it's easier to show up as you and have a win with a product that you firmly believe in. That's part of who you are.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, it's funny because I think that if you are really good, like you're a really good salesperson, like you're a really good salesperson, you can be who you are. And I
True.
truly believe that. I can walk into any situation. I could go to the Middle East and I could be who I am, regardless of whether I'm the Philadelphia kid Eastern, the New York, Philadelphia kid who grew up versus the guy that turned into the oil software guy, or I just landed in Abu Dhabi and I'm going to pitch somebody, some sheik on some type of big investment. I think I could pull it off because I think I'm
Sure.
good enough. I think the mid-level sales guys that are kind of green, they haven't really found their footing. I would say if you are authentic, it could shoot you in the foot. And I don't think there's like I'm not saying to not be authentic. I'm just saying that people might not like you and buy from you. And so there was this one guy, for example, he was an SDR for me recently, and he had an accent, like more of like a downtown Louisiana kind of different accent versus like West Texas. And the way he came across on the calls was just more like inner city versus like rural West Texas.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
could just tell the way people, nobody could see anybody, nobody, it was all voice. And I could just tell because I watched the calls, I was like, they're not, he's saying the same script, saying it not horribly either. He wasn't, they weren't connecting with them. And there was a story from Michael Dell, the guy that founded the Dell computers. He said one of the biggest lessons he learned in his early sales career was he was selling to West Texas. And he said, as soon as he put on that little Texas twang, he was like, my sales skyrocketed because he's like, the guys thought they were from there. And so it's this weird thing where maybe it's a West Texas thing because they're very like insular. But I just have seen people who have tried to be themselves and they just suck. And I think it's partially because they're just not good salespeople, honestly. But I think it's partially
Nailed it. That you just nailed it. The manufacturing the twang, I'll tell you right now, it's going to bite you in the ass because they're
Mhm.
eventually going to find out you faked it.
Right,
You may have gotten
right,
that deal, but you're not going to keep that customer for long because they're insulted. Okay.
right.
So I'm going to
Exactly.
push back on ever doing that shit in sales.
Yes.
But you're right. Going back to your right point is that not every person is built for sales, and your authentic self may never succeed in a sales transaction because you're just not a salesperson. And I do believe
Right.
you're either born with some sort of gift to build on or you're not. Um, and that's a bulk of the people that try sales just simply don't have that DNA to be themselves eventually or to be a good salesperson. And that's fine. It's not for everybody. You know,
Yeah.
the money
Yeah.
you and I have made in this industry, it wouldn't be made by us if it were for everybody. Right.
Mhm.
And arguably talking about sales, generally speaking, I don't have a college degree.
Mhm.
I dropped out after my third year at University of Wyoming and wanted to become a ski bum. And then I
Mhm.
became a ski bum and realized I was pretty good at sales. And by being a photographer for the ski resort and taking those pictures that you hate at the top of the ski lift that get off, I'm going to take your picture with your family. I was really good at that at 18, 19, 20 years old. And that started the arc of my sales career. I never went back to school. And by, 3 years later, I was making six figures at 24, 25 and never looked back. I've had some
Mhm.
dips in income since then, but I can tell you I make more money than most people that have degrees. And so if the point is not to brag or pat my own back shoulder, it's to tell you it's not for everybody. It is very hard. I was born with it. You were born with it. Now it's building upon that gift, right? Which
Right.
is what we're talking about in some of these nuanced Jedi-level sales that you can
Mhm.
teach to somebody that was born with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, you get my point on that.
No, yeah, I think that it's one of those things where I actually struggled. I agree now. When I was younger, I had this belief. I don't know where it came from, but I don't believe it anymore. The belief I had, and that goes to show anybody listening, is like, look, just because you believe something doesn't mean you always believe it. And I
Sure.
think that's a really important idea because I think a lot of people just don't actually get to that point of thinking of like, hey, look, I could be wrong. So when I was younger, I used to believe that everybody could learn anything.
Yeah.
And I thought everybody could be anybody. I believe that. It was a belief for me that was like, I can do whatever I want in this life. And the truth is like there's things that we're really good at, and there's things we're probably not the best at. And I think this philosophy or this kind of frame of wisdom has been said 1,000 times in different ways across humanity, but it goes something to the degree of finding something you're really, really good at and then double down on that and go then try to like do all of your learning around that subject. So you have to
Hmm.
like it, you have to be good at it, and it has to be able to pay you some money. And it's like, go find that thing and you probably will do well. But when I was younger, I used to think like, because a lot of people want to be in sales because you make money. So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I can talk. I can, speak. I could be good at sales, but I actually think it's like, yeah, you have to have the gift of gab, but you also have to be really smart. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to problem solve in live time. And so it's like there's all these subtle like behavioral and personality characteristics that go into really good salesmanship. And I think just most people don't have it. And I've stopped trying to train it into people. If I can't identify in my new sales hires, because I hire a lot of salespeople, if I can't see that within the first few conversations, and then when they get on the phone, see it happening in live time, I'm not going to even try to train you because it's like, look, you don't have the basics.
Yeah. The chromosomal structure is not there. And you're probably just as good at this as I am, as identifying, do they have the DNA? And I'm going to give you an example. And Matt, if you're watching this, this is about you. I won't share his last name, but
Okay.
I had a guy cold call me because he saw my LinkedIn profile. So I was, had done some good things in oil and gas. Cold called me about a deal he was trying to sell to investors. And I immediately, within 10 seconds, knew he had that chromosomal structure. I identified it. It's like, ooh, I want to hear this guy out. Even though as soon as he told me his company, I was like, I know I'm never doing this, but I heard him out. Okay. And it's one, maybe tell me if this statistic is right for you. It's about one a year that come to me that I'm like, you've got it.
I would say
It's
less.
one,
I mean, yeah, it's not a lot.
okay,
It's not often. Yeah.
less frequently. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just spitballing. It's probably a 1 in 1,000.
Yeah. It's not a lot.
And as soon as I identified that, now I'm letting him pitch me, and I'm then going, okay, I'm going to let him down really gently that I'm not going to invest, but that I want to build this guy because it's so rare to find that now I want to invest in him. I want to pay the gift forward that was given to me by my mentors in sales and build this guy out from where he's at. Cause he had just started. He was a car salesman that crushed it in Texas. Top profit margin. I think his best year in profit margins for one dealership was over $3 million as a car salesman.
Wow.
Okay. Record crusher. So I knew he had something. And then when I heard him pitching the oil deal, I was like, all right, I'm going to cultivate this guy. So long story short, I got him out of the company he's at. I put him with a company that I know he will do very well at, that's selling a product that has demand, that has a track record, that makes money for investors. So I could take him out of that learning curve that I went through by removing a lot of the hurdles. Now he's with a team that the sales manager is somebody I taught how to do oil and gas sales, and he's my best friend. So now he's under him working, using the same techniques that I taught, his name's Chris, to teach Matt. So I know now he's being cultivated the way I want him. And the ultimate goal here is to bring him into my investment fund world once he's ready. And it all boils down to he had that chromosomal structure that we can identify, but not everybody has.
Yeah. And I think identifying that for a newer salesperson, even if you have it, it might be hard for you to see it in somebody else at first, if you had my belief. And so I think that it's like, once you see it though, it's like one of those things, like once you see it, like once you see the man on the moon, you can't stop seeing the man on the moon.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's like, yeah, now I see it. Like when I first talked to you, I was like, oh, he's got it, like, cause there's a lot of, there's intangibles, right? There's things that like, it's like your downtones are impeccable, but I don't think you were thinking about that. I think you just do it. Like everyone taught me downtones, like, uptones, downtones, like we talked about before, or specific cadences of speech or ways of saying, does that make sense? Like, that's all salesmanship that you can do. And maybe that's like, seems like, oh, they're all contrived. We just naturally do it. It's just part of our genetics. And so I think that's where it's like, you see these sales trainers coming in and talking about these very specific lines or things you can do. And I'm just like, if you're teaching somebody that, they're not a salesperson. I'm sorry.
No. It's right. The down, we call them down ticks, down tones, up ticks, up tones. Those are definitely something that I can identify in somebody if they naturally do it. And if you're listening and don't know what the hell we're talking about, I could do a whole nother episode on that stuff. And I know too, and it's fun and I'm happy to. So if you're interested, let us know. But once you've identified that, then it's the next level of, and I was thinking about something you said earlier that I said, which is really a mistake to tell people you should look for in a salesperson, which is the gift of gab. It's really the gift of listening.
Hmm.
Being able to speak by hearing what they're telling you. And like you said earlier, making decisions on your feet, quick on your feet by intaking versus outputting and
Hmm.
before you output, right? So getting them to talk first, getting them to talk the most, all those things is all about the art of listening, which is above and beyond the person that speaks with upticks and downticks, right? Then, so that's the next level I look for is, are they listening to me more than they're waiting for their turn to talk?
Hmm.
If they've got those two things, I can build them into a 7-figure earner very quickly.
Hmm.
But those
Yeah.
two
Right.
things are less than 1,000, 1 out of 1,000 people.
It's I think that's very difficult for people because there's two things that come up, I think, for new salespeople generally, which is even if you're good, like even if you're good, you can fall into this trap, which is number one, silent. There's this old saying that I live now by, which is use silence, don't let silence use you. And it's this idea of like, if I stop speaking, it's awkward, right? Like I just did. And so it's like anytime you do that, where you go and you just like let the silence hang, most human beings, it's torturous for. And so, this is like one of those tactics where I do think you can actually train yourself on because I love the saying, I don't know where I heard it, but the idea of like if you speak too much, like you don't listen enough, because listening too can be cultivated. I think that's one of those things where it is the persuasion part of it, or by persuasion I mean like the ability to interject or downtones, up tones, and the ability to ask questions. That's kind of natural for me. But I would say that stopping and actually just waiting and just listening really intensely, I think took me a little while to get there. And the enterprise side, I wanted to speak and speak and speak. And so somebody said to me once, take the tip of your tongue and like literally put it on the back of your teeth. You
I
can't.
bite mine. I bite my
Yeah.
tongue. Same
Yep.
thing
Yeah.
though.
So
Do it.
two senior sales guys, who
Mhm.
have been at it, literally still do small things like that to remind ourselves to say, like, look, shut up, don't speak. And when they stop speaking, and then like you make a question point, like, great, so here's the price. And you just usually people are like, well, so what do you think? How's it go? I will sit there for 30 seconds where I'll be like, so the price is this. And it'll be dead silent with 10 people in the room. I won't speak first. I refuse. I make them break the silence. And so, but that takes balls, that's like something you gotta think about.
That takes a set for sure. And I can agree with you. It was one of the harder things for me to learn too. But once I did and used it effectively, I think my record was 3.5 minutes on a call where I had told the guy to buy, and it was a 6-figure investment. Now this was after 2 days worth of calls with him. Told him to buy like this 10th time, and this time I could tell I had him, but it was silence. And in that part of a deal, he who talks first loses.
Mm-hmm.
So he who talks most loses. He who talks first loses in that scenario. So, and I had a team of salespeople listening to me, and it was 3.5 or so minutes before either of us said anything. And the salespeople around me were just squirming, like, what is going on here? Why don't you say anything? Because you know that they are processing and that the next word out of their mouth is going to either be their real objection to know why they're not doing it, or they're going to buy it. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the ultimate goal in any sales pitch. You want to get to peel the onion to what is the real objection, so you can either handle it and align with it or part ways, or they buy. And that is
Mm-hmm.
only done with what we call it the pregnant pause. Pregnant because whoever talks first is delivering the baby.
Oh, interesting. That's a good one.
So yeah, and man, it is hard because you want to talk, you want to say something, you want to
Yeah.
do the typical check-ins like people do. So what are you thinking? Tell me what your thoughts are right now.
Mhm.
Do not. So
Yeah.
that's fun. That's why I love this job. It's so much fun.
It is. It's a game. It's a game, and I think that's where it's like on one hand there's like some of the basics of like tonality and speech and rate of speech. It's all the paralanguage, the body language of the voice. I think is the natural part, but there are some tactics and some tricks and hacks you can implement, like the silence stuff. I think silence is a big piece. Listening is a big piece. Those and very specific objection handlers, I think could be learned, like, things you can just memorize that come out.
Sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
so there's it's a trained skill to a degree, but I think the base, like we were talking about, is like it's a je ne sais quoi. It's like some type of feeling you get when you're around somebody, like, oh, this person has control. And what's interesting, like this is the thing that I think is counterintuitive because everyone thinks, oh, it's the friendly sales guy. It's the guy that's super outgoing and friendly. I've actually found personally for myself, and also I think for my favorite salespeople, I love really terse people. And so it's like, how do you be both welcoming and friendly, but also no bullshit? And there's a little bit of porcupine in you. There's a little bit like of terseness. And I see that in you too. I like it. It's like this, like, you're not going to fuck with me. You're not going to take advantage of my time or my energy. And, and I do that too, where if I feel like somebody's fucking with me or wasting my time, I'll be like, look, like like this happened the other day on a call. It was amazing. This group of people came on and I thought they were a competitor trying to fish. So anybody listening, fishing is like where a competitor comes on trying to act like a prospect and they're trying to get you to demo to them or give
Yep.
you some information about your service or offering so that
Happens
they
all the
can
time.
happens all the time. So this was very obvious to me that it was a fishing expedition. And so, like, my whole team, everybody, there was a SDR involved and then account executive pitch. And there'd been like hours of meetings, apparently, which I got really upset about, by the way. But then they finally brought me in for the final thing. And I looked at the website, I looked at the people on there, and I was like, I'm going to be blunt with you guys. I think you're fishing. I just said it like that. And I was like, and I don't appreciate it. So please tell me why I should sell to you and why you're not trying to steal from our company. I like said it
Yeah.
just like that. And
Yeah.
everyone was like, did he just say that? Like all the salespeople, and they spent the next 10 minutes just trying to like be like, we're not fishing. We definitely want to buy. We're going to move forward. Anyways, I got on with the owner of the company because he called me right after. He's like, heard you thought we were I'm like, that's not what we're trying to do. We're going to buy today. He was now telling me, like, reassuring me how much he was going to buy. Anyways, they ended up calling back. Like, we put the proposal together. He sent over the contract and he's like, yeah, we're not going to move forward. I'm like, yeah, because you were fishing. Exactly. I knew you weren't going to move forward, but you didn't get anything else from me. You didn't get my pricing. You didn't get my proposal. You got a contract, but it's like you didn't get like the full thing. Cause I knew I was like, there was an NDA in place. There was like, you won't steal from us. Like I put some terms in there and they were like, cause it was so obvious they were a
Yeah.
direct competitor.
Well, and you call them out, right? And it takes a terse personality to do that. It takes somebody that's recognizing their time is being wasted and actually acts on that. You know what I mean? A lot of people are just like, well, like it's such a good meeting. And how many times have you heard that? I had a great meeting. They kept me there for an hour and a half.
Another good
Or they
meeting.
kept me up.
Exactly.
I was on the phone with that guy for 45 minutes
Yep.
when it should have been a 10-minute prospect call. I'm like, and that is the win to you. Okay. So what I mean by that is you actually, in order to respond to that being a waste of your time, you have to recognize that it's a waste of time.
Right.
And then you have to take action around that, which is calling them out, which is having those porcupine needles and saying, no, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very powerful.
And I think recognition, you hit on something there that was actually really important, which is somebody said to me that the key to success is the 3 R's. I don't know where I heard this. I used to think it was Malcolm Gladwell, but then I looked into it. I don't think he said it. But so the 3 R's are right place, right time, which is luck. Recognition of you're in the right place in the right time of some opportunity. And then it's reacting to it. So, but you have to be in the right place at the right time. So in sales, you can position yourself at the right place because you have an SDR group or you do some marketing and you get somebody on a call. So that's kind of contrived. It's not really luck. It's very actually intentional. But then you recognize whether there is a problem or a solution for yourself. Like, oh, this guy's a prospect. That's the whole point of qualification. It's like, is this guy good for me? Not am I good for them? Vice versa, really. And then there's reaction, but it also comes down, like you can use that for prospecting purposes. But I think more importantly, it comes down to like sniffing bullshit. And also like you might be on the right account. Like if I'm selling to Exxon, might be the right target. I might be in the HS&E, like the health safety department, and that might be the right department. But I might be talking to somebody who's just a time waster, and the guys just give me the runaround. And I had this, I think I told you this. I had a scenario where I was invited into a house when I was going door to door. And I was like, they're going to give me salmon dinner. I got a glass of wine. It was awesome. And I learned pretty quickly in the door to door world, it's better to have a gun pulled on you than to be invited in for dinner, because the gun meant no. And the invite to dinner meant probably not, but we're going to feed you and waste an hour of your time. And so for me, I just don't like to have my time wasted. So I'd rather you be terse and a jerk, or than be very nice and just waste time. So for me, I would just very quickly, as a salesperson, have this spidey sense of, is this going somewhere? Because if it's not going somewhere, I got places to be. I got things to
Yeah.
do, you know?
It's funny you say that. Going back to the outline of the call I told you about was getting to the no right away. You wanted them to say no to give you the green light. So that's essentially, using your metaphor, having them pulling the gun out for them and pointing it at yourself.
Right.
Pulling
Yeah.
the trigger. That's what you want. Exactly. Because the guy that says yes right out of the gate to, hey, I have an investment opportunity. Would you like to see it? And they don't know anything about it, but they're like, yeah, tell me more. They're going to waste your time. The real end user for virtually any product is busy. And if you don't have enough opportunity within a cold call to give them all the reasons to stick with you. So it's the opposite. You give them a reason to say no, and then you sell. Because once they say no, they're expecting something back. So now they've given you permission to sell. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Instead of you just selling without permission.
Right. It does. I think that it's kind of the same way you can identify you can see it in a true salesperson. You can also see it in a true buyer. It's like a true buyer is somebody who, like, it's a feeling. It's like this, like, okay, this guy has a real problem. So it's very clear. Number two is the demeanor is, there's no need to position, or, like, I think a lot of false buyers, as I call them, the false buyers that will present themselves as a decision maker. They'll say they have a budget. They'll say they're ready to move forward. They'll say that they're interested, but they're really just like some middle level guy who's gatekeeping to the real people because he wants to look good and bring it to somebody else, but has no actual buying role. Happens all the time, especially in enterprise deals. And so we're talking about Exxon. Happens all the time where you have a guy that you find as some mid-level role in Exxon. If you don't know this, it's a very big company. It happens to be the biggest company in the world. And there's tiers to the game. And so not just tiers to the game of sales, but tiers to the game of that literal enterprise. So you have the field level and you have the regional level and all the way up. And so if you don't understand the pecking order and the relationships, and so for me, when I go into those big deals, somebody said to me years ago, he had a whole flow chart of how to work enterprise deals. And it was like, look, if you don't find your champion, somebody who literally will just fight for you internally and will feed you inside information, and isn't just like a bullshitter, like who actually is a mover and shaker in the organization and can touch people across the organization or reach across departments or reach up if needed. If you don't find that person, then don't try. Right. So for me, like, the number one criteria for me for an enterprise salesperson is that what I call the green beret. It's like the sniper, right? The green beret sniper who can go into an organization. It's like using the analogy of the sniper, goes into Afghanistan, finds the local tribal leaders, finds out who has the most influence, creates a little band of them to, like, start to, like, come up with, like, a big problem worth solving. And then they go start looping all the other tribal leaders in. And then finally you bring it up to the chief of the area and you say, hey, we have this massive problem. And then there's a budget and they start to say, we want to do it. But you first have to make your first entry, and you have to find, like, if you just dropped in from the sky in your Halo Navy SEAL uniform and you just walk up to the first chiefdom and he's like, well, I'm the guy around here. It's like you're fooling yourself, because maybe he's not. And you have to quickly determine who's bullshitting.
I'll add a layer to that. Finding your chief, finding your tribe is part of it. And I love that sniper green beret analogy when you're entering a large organization. But what I found works very effectively for me is finding whoever's going to work for you in getting to the decision maker. Because in a company like Exxon, if you're cold calling, you're not sitting with the decision maker on your first call. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So no matter what you're selling to any enterprise, if it's a fairly large organization, you're going to have to do some work, some green beret tactics to get in at the level you get in. So get in where you fit in, and then sell them on being your advocate So now they're part of your sales force. They're
Exactly.
not, they're on the same side of the table. So the art of the sale, still, you have to be on your game. And a lot of people dismiss the people that they think are not the decision makers. And that is such a bad thing to do, because if you can get them to work for you, they can ultimately get you much more fast track to the guy that is going to be, or gal that is going to be the decision maker. But in essence, you're multiplying yourself. You want to clone these people into more of you. And how do you do that? You got to sell them on why, on what it's going to be to benefit them. And a lot of times those people, like you said, want to be the guy that I brought this. Yeah. You want to pat them on the shoulder. Imagine with this solution that you think is good. Imagine if you're the guy. So you take yourself out of it. You're the guy that's going to get all the credit. Imagine what that's going to do for your career, and maybe not use those words, but use those implications.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother chapter, Ben, that we could talk about. But yeah, that is very important. And I love those metaphors you used.
Yeah. It's almost like we're going to go deeper into the metaphor. It's like, yes, you're the Green Beret, but you're almost like the CIA in that level, because you're not there to take credit. Nobody needs to know you exist. You just need to be the guy whispering in the ear, and you're literally setting up the prop general where you're going in and being like, you're like delivering arms behind the deal. And all of a sudden you're giving them intelligence, and all of a sudden they got like a drone missile, and you're like, where the hell did that guy get that drone missile from? And it's like, all of a sudden he has this full like map, and he has all the information he needs. Like, how did this guy get so smart? And all of a sudden the guy from the inside creates a coup of your solution. And all of a sudden, like the heads of everyone's talking to each other.
That's brilliant. The CIA, the CIA operative versus the Green Beret operative. That is such a perfect metaphor for what we're trying to explain here. I love it.
I had an experience that wasn't sales related, but it taught me a big lesson about how to influence large organizations. I was 27. I'm 35 now. So this was like 8 years ago. And I was in I guess you could call it like a professional development course. I don't know what to call it. It was basically, I paid money to go in and get taught by people how to be a better leader and be more self-aware. It was kind of like life coachy meets leadership, something like that. And I was going through this thing where there was 150 people in this organization. And it was really interesting because they had you do a lot of kind of games that were real life, but also not real life. And it was meant to put you in what they call a container. It's like a fake game. That was weird. Now there's confetti. Anybody listening on my screen? When you like wave your hand on Zoom, it like gives you a thumbs up or something.
Yes.
So, I was in this organization, this 150 person organization we were doing some type of fundraising event. And I used to be a professional fundraiser. So I had some ideas, and I knew that there was a leader, and the leader was named Tom. And Tom was the coolest guy. Like, I was kind of jealous of him at the time because I was really good one-on-one with people, or two-on-one. But as soon as I got in front of like 20 people, like in a speaking environment where they didn't know me and I didn't know them, I didn't have the skill set back then. I've gotten better, but he had this natural thing. And so everyone gravitated towards Tom. And I knew that if I wanted my idea to be taken up by the group, Tom had to approve.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing: is Tom was very open. He was extremely open to ideas. And so I knew that if I went to Tom, he would listen to me because he trusted me. Foreshadowing, at the end of this 3-month period, they actually voted out of 150 people, who would they want this person to lead them into battle, essentially. And Tom got like half the votes and I got half the votes. So I was right below Tom.
That's awesome.
So I did a good job. But to get to that position, this is where it got interesting, is there was this girl named Jessica. And this girl named Jessica was what I would call a blocker in the sales world. She was jealous. I hope Jessica's not listening to this. We're friends. We were friends. The long story short is she was jealous. She would always just turn my ideas down. And I started noticing this trend. I would go to Tom. Tom would say yes. And then all of a sudden, Tom would be like, hey, man, I don't think we're going to do that. What I found out later is that Jessica had a relationship with Tom, like a romantic relationship that was forming. And she didn't like my ideas. And so every time I would bring it up, they would be, spooning or whatever. And then it would get crushed. And I didn't know that this was happening, but I did realize I had to get Jessica on my side. So every time moving forward, I CIA'd the shit out of her. I would go to her and I'd say, Jessica, I had this idea and I was wondering what your thoughts are on it. And I wasn't saying we should do it. I was like, what are your thoughts? And she'd be like, well, that's interesting. And I'd be like, Would you like to take this one? Cause like, I don't, maybe you could talk to Tom instead of me. I'd rather this be your idea. And then she would take it to Tom and then all of a sudden the whole organization would have it. So I just became Jessica. I was like Jessica's puppet. Like I would just be like, Jessica, we're doing this now. And then she would go and get Tom to do it. And I made the whole organization move that way. So
I love that. I love that. I was waiting. I knew where you were going with this, that you'd utilize her as your operative. But what I was waiting for you to say is that you'd be like, Jessica, I've got this really great idea, but I'm afraid to bring it to Tom.
yeah,
And what do you think about it? And just leave
right.
it. Don't even say, would you think you would want to take it? Because
Yeah,
she's going to just take it and
right,
want all the credit for it. And then you really do know whether or not she is your blocker.
right.
Because then all of a sudden that idea gets back to you as hers. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things like that in organizations where it's important to know the personality type. And I don't mean in terms of like there's all these disc assessments and I do all those for my sales reps, but I mean, just in terms of very simply, does the person want to be led or do they want to be, do they want to lead?
Mhm.
And it's like, if the person wants to lead, like Jessica wanted to lead, she wanted to have a say. So for me to go around her, it triggered her. I don't know where it comes from. I don't give a shit where it comes from. It came from somewhere. And so I acknowledged that in her and I realized, but she was a smart person. She just wasn't going to let me be the influence. And so I just realized that was a dynamic rather than getting angry or being like, no, I'm the one who has to lead here. It's like, no, okay, I'm going to go work with what I have. I'm going to get the job done because that's what matters, not me getting credit. There was somebody said, would you rather be right or would you rather be rich? And I was like, I'd rather be rich. I'm like, I don't
In,
have to be
in,
right here. So,
that's a common used one in marriages, right? Would you rather be right or happy? In
right.
sales, it's would you rather be right or rich? And what you're talking about, bringing back to the point of this this podcast, which is brilliant, is being able to let down your ego to get the deal done. And what you just did was describe that. Now, so many people that are good at sales. Now, let's remove those that shouldn't be in sales, and let's only talk about those that should be. The number one thing that is their resistance to getting rich is their own ego. They want to have all the answers. We've already talked about that. Don't be the guy with all the answers. Even if you know the answer, sometimes say, I don't know. They want to be the one that brings all the ideas to their boss. They want all the recognition. And a lot of times they leave huge dollars on the floor because they are not smart enough or humble enough to utilize a Jessica as their operative in an organizational B2B sales. So brilliant way to capstone this is talking about ego, which has to be a part of the salesman's DNA, but also has to be identified as when to drop the ego and let somebody else do your work and get recognition. Because ultimately, what are you in sales for? Paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Ego, recognition sometimes go hand in hand with it, but more often than not, you'll find if you can drop those and be a CIA operative versus the sniper even, you'll get paid more. Ultimately, that's why we're all in this job. That's why everybody wants to do this job for the paycheck. So great way to capstone this, Ben. And I think that, we've covered a lot of ground here, been on an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah. So we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
I think that the very, very last thing on that whole point is that take that and then multiply that by 1,000, which is like, you might have one Jessica in one department, but you might have two, and you might have three Freds in a different department. And when I do this right with like big deals is I literally have a whole org chart where I have like red lines going to who knows who and who is influencing who. And you become like, if you watch the Game of Thrones or anything where it's like called the Lord of Whispers or something like that. It's like, you need to
Little
know
birds,
everybody.
little
Yeah.
birds.
Little
You got to
birds.
have your little birds.
Exactly. And you have to be, at the end of the rainbow, final stop here is once you've done that correctly at a big organization, and we asked, how do you go sell into big orgs? This is this is the magic here is you get them all whispering and you get them all thinking your thoughts. You empower them, like Jeff said, you get them all into one room with the key buying committee. And then you're introducing people in the organization that have never met before. I've walked into 30, 40 person pitches where they're like, oh yeah, I'm Becky. Nice to meet you. I'm from this HS&E department. Like, oh, I'm from the operations department. I've never met you before. And it's like, literally, you're just all of a sudden the glue
The
between
glue.
everybody. Yeah.
That's the perfect term. Yeah. And then when the deal gets done as a result, that is ultimately the biggest win ever, because now they're better for it. They're communicating better. You've introduced people. The product is a solution that they needed. They win, you win, everybody wins. And that's a multiple win. So great way to end this. And yeah, we have other chapters to unpack, my friend. There,
Yeah,
this
we're gonna
is
have
so
to do
much fun.
second shows here.
If there's an interest in talking about any aspect that we've touched on, let us know. I'd love to talk about the art of downticks, upticks, pregnant pauses, because we just touched on those. And there really is, full books that have been written on it that Ben and I can probably help with.
Yeah, we should definitely do a follow-up just on like tonality and paralanguage and all that kind of stuff. So,
I love it.
well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for helping educate the audience and imparting your wisdom. Really appreciate you as always. And Jeff and I have a little side thing where we bet on the UFC together on the weekend, so we'll keep that going. But if you're ever in Houston and Jeff's ever in Houston, how would you get in touch with you, Jeff? What's the best contact point?
Just call myself.
Okay.
It's if you want to put it up, or I can say it right here, but
If you want to, it's up to you. I don't care.
Area code 307, Wyoming boy, born and raised, 630-3992. Text, call. You can send a carrier pigeon, but that may take a while. Or
great.
as
Well,
you
reach
alluded
out.
to Game of Thrones, a raven.
Appreciate you, Jeff. Signing out from Next Gen Sales Leaders. See you guys.
I appreciate you, Ben. Bye-bye.